You are getting ready to listen to the voice of Dr. Rhadi Ferguson, 2004 Olympian, four-time national judo champion, Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, author, speaker, and coach.
Let me start off by saying that we had the first 2 days of friction points, where we talked about what friction points are, how they happen. We talked about the difference between a friction point and a hurdle, a friction point and a wall, and a friction point and basically a decision tree. And then the next day we talked about friction points in friendships. And as we elevate through the conversation, we want to get more into friction points and how they apply in intimate relationships. Now, we had to kind of sit down and roll the dice on who was going to do what part of the friction points. And I got trumped. I was in most relationships, I trump people. Most people, no.
Slow down.
You can't really even say Trump no more without even people. Well, I got Trump like a spades Trump. You know, I was married for 17 years. Then I went through I would say a fortunate divorce, even though divorce in and of itself is unfortunate. That in and of itself, the change, the friction, the different movement and the growth at the end ended up being great for me, even though I didn't think it was good to me at the time. But Coach Arlo's been married longer than I have, and he's been with his wife longer than I had been with my ex. So there are certain times in our coaching relationships and the switch on process where Coach Arlo takes the lead, and I'm the backup. And there's certain times when I'm the lead and he's the backup. Somebody got to be Gladys Knight, and somebody got to be the Pips. And it's today, listen, ain't nothing wrong with being. Listen, the Pips got paid too. The Pips still getting some money. All right.
Yeah, I think about like Rice, Montana, you know, that kind of thing. I think it's kind of it's a interdependency that we flex for the benefit of our clients and
benefit of our clients,
and benefit of the public. We use our skills where the best fit, depending on the client. Because there are times where, you know, I need to be more what Doc usually takes to lead on, and sometimes there are times where I'm not capable of handling the situation, and his skill set is far superior to mine, even if I could. And in those areas, we just do what's best for the client. So.
Correct. In this situation, there's a relationship piece that we really want to kind of attack and have you get a good understanding of it, because I could make this point, but the fact of the matter is that when the friction point came up in my relationship dissolved because of it. So do I have some things to say about it? Of course. Am I the lead in this particular discussion? No, I'm not. And the reason being is because I have a different take on friction points and how they need to be handled. And I don't want my take to sound negative to someone else whose friction point, who I perceived it as a friction point, and the other person perceived it as being a whatever it is. What type of point?
I don't know.
The point of no return. Are you like?
Yeah, makes sense. I see what you're saying.
Exactly. Coach Arlo says it like this, and we have a different phrase in the grappling communities on the mat about embracing the grind, and we talk about taking people out to a deep water. But Coach Arlo says you have to get a person to the point where they want to be done more than they want to what? Win, right? And some people, their done point is earlier than other people's done point. And people like me, I see that I have a high level of disdain for people who quit like that. But I have to learn over a period of time how to respect people's quit mechanisms, because I have quit mechanisms too. They just happen in different areas.
Yeah, they're perfect. That's really good. That's really good to look at it. So here's the thing, right? We wanted to talk about this, and it's funny because we coach couples and we coach individuals and we coach people that are married. We coach people that want to be married. We coach all different kinds of people, right? people who have been through divorces, people who have no intention of being married again, um, people who never want to get married in the first place. We kind of coach all different kinds of people. And the interesting thing about it is that while everybody might not want to be married or unmarried or what have you, nobody wants to be alone, right? Like nobody wants to be in their life by themselves. And I don't mean like you dependent or anybody. I don't use any of those kind of words because I think sometimes it lends itself to ownership or deserving in the relationship. And I think it takes some of the part that makes relationships really good, intimate relationships especially, really good because you can stop keeping score, right? And to Doc's point, if I don't plan on quitting, it's not really a hard day or an easy day or a big fight or a little fight or a big issue or a small issue. It's just something to get through to get to tomorrow. And you start to realize that they're not that big a deal. And I've been blessed to be married long enough with the same woman long enough to have watched like arguments. I can't remember what they were about. They got to be so big, become like jokes now and things that are really small and getting to the point where you can start dealing with real stuff, right? Because most of the time, what you find in relationships where struggles are, it's not usually over the real stuff. It's usually over like superficial stuff. Well, that's the way it's described. The reality is it's the real stuff. The problem is you hang on to the superficial stuff because the vulnerability of talking about the real stuff. And this is why intimacy is so important and why friction points are so important in helping you get the type of intimacy you need in order to be able to benefit from being in an intimate relationship in the first place. And intimacy isn't just physical. Intimacy is about a closeness. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. Go ahead, Doc. What were you going to say?
No, I wanted to get ready. I wanted to do the preamble on it because we're ready to dive in.
Yeah,
we're ready to dive in. So here's where I would like to start. So Coach Arlo and I did some research the night before on this particular topic. And we asked ourselves, because we have to look at the highest level intimate relationship that we recognize per the Christian theoretical framework, and that is that of marriage.
Hold on a second. Yes. Are you going to tell them how we got this conversation?
Yes, no, I'm getting ready to go.
Okay.
We looked at arranged marriages.
No, do you remember what we were saying right before we got into this conversation, though?
What was that?
Right before we decided to start looking this stuff up. Do you remember what we were talking about right before this?
What was that?
We were talking about people's idea about how marriage is supposed to go. Remember we were talking about love,
right? And that's what got it. So I want you to handle all that. So you handle the. All right. I want to, but this is good. This is all good. So we got to the point in our discussion where we had to sit down and say, well, let's look at marriage. Let's take marriage as the standard, because we have to have something to look at. So we looked at the divorce rate, which is around 50 to 60%. Then we looked at the divorce rate for arranged.
You're a Hall of Famer in baseball, though, right?
Right. Then we looked at the divorce rate for arranged marriages. I said, "Do you know what it is, Coach Arlo?" He said, "What, 30%?" I said, "No, Lord." He said, 20%? I said, "No, Lord." He said, 10%? I said, "No, man, Lord." He said, 5%? I said, "No, man, Lord." And that. He said, "What is it?" I said, "It's 4%. And in India, the arranged marriages, the divorce rate is at 1%. Now, people get together for a plethora of reasons. People get divorced for a plethora of reasons. We're not going through the why people stayed, why they left, why they got married. We're not going through it. We're going through the raw numbers. And there is something to be said about what occurs in arranged marriages and the importance or lack thereof of attraction. Now, I am going to exit with the question. With this particular question. Why do you believe that people per the data, it seems, are able to handle friction points better in arranged marriages than ones when they make the selections on their own.
That is really good. So here's the funny thing. So here's the conversation. We're having this conversation about relationships and how they've changed over the years. And I always lend myself back to, had the benefit of seeing really long marriages. And I got a chance to see my parents early in their marriage. And I got a chance to see my grandparents late in their marriage. And I got to see a bunch of other people, my aunts, uncles. I got to see people get married, divorced all the time. I had people see it being marriages. 2 marriages last a really long time. I've seen marriages of different types, and they're all fun. I'm going to tell you all the stories about all these people. But I do want to say this, is that the one thing that I really became clear to me, right? Well, there was a point in the marriage where the marriage became more important than any individual person, right? The union was key. And something about that allowed those people to have a level of intimacy that didn't exist anywhere else in the world with them. And they never had it with anybody else. And this was the thing that made it different. And this was the part where, the argument today is that when I see these memes and posts about relationships and stuff, I'm always challenged because I'm like, hey, you don't want any of the hard stuff. And that's what real good relationships are made out of, is the hard stuff, right? And people say, what do you mean? I said, man, until you go something with your partner, you don't really know how strong your relationship is. See, people think love holds relationships together. I'm gonna tell you what my dad told me. He said, listen, man. He said, people fall in and out of love all the time. You better find somebody you can make it with because life is hard. I'm gonna say that again because it was, at the time, I had been really young, 18, 19 years old, we're having this conversation. But the magnitude of the simplicity was what, to me, is what really made it, hit home for me, because he says, listen, man, I think it started with like, hey, look, I don't know what you feel about getting married, but you seem like it's something you're going to want to do. So I need to tell you something. He said, listen, people fall in and out of love all the time. You better find somebody you can make it with because life is hard. And I took that to heart because I started to think about it. And I'm like, man, life is hard. Like my parents, I thought I had a really good marriage, right? Was it perfect? It was perfect for them, right? And I watched them argue and I watched them get to the point where they figured it out, right? And it was kind of rolling. And it was fun because the argument started to be funny. And that to me is kind of like the key to the whole deal, right? Is when you can have disagreements and enjoy the benefit of being in a disagreement with somebody who won't give up on you because you guys don't agree or think the same thing about something. That's a magnificent place to be. And we recognize this place in our friendships all the time. And if you're listening to this and you have a daughter or you have a sister or a friend who has a really good friend of hers that she would never date, right? We all know about this, right? I had the benefit of having somebody like this in my life early on when I was in high school. And it was really interesting because the level of intimacy of that relationship is so unique, right? And you really don't even see it again unless you have a really good marriage at some point. You don't ever realize like how great it is. And sometimes you overlook the struggles in the beginning. When you go back and look at it, you realize it usually started through a disagreement. And it was through that disagreement that you found some common ground and realized, hey, if I can argue with somebody like that and still come back to a point where we can get to agree with each other and laugh about it and move forward, where it becomes like a joke. Like my best friend, I joked that we hated each other. Like it was a funny, we went at it like cats and dogs, we had the summer in camp together in like 6th grade. And for like 6 days, we're going at it, just going at it. And we became like best friends. And it was one of those days where a lot of the guys that I'm really close to, we didn't have the most harmonious relationship, right? But that's kind of what makes our relationship so great. Is because, my fraternity brothers, is because we know how strong it is. We know we get on the phone and text each other. And if you didn't know us, you think we hated each other sometimes. Like we go deep. We talk about your upbringing. It's serious business, right? I think kids are probably the only people off limits. Like we don't ever really get on people's kids, right? Unless they get grown and they actually get loud enough they can say something. But most of the time, It's just us. And what the benefit of it is that we have this intimacy with one another where we can be totally raw. Like this is the one place in the world kind of where we don't have to pretend to be anybody else. Like we really don't care what anybody says. And we don't care how, and people don't care what they say to us either. So it's so refreshing to be in that kind of relationship. And then you look at these relationships I was just talking about where, you know, men and women are friends or dating, or even women, whatever the situation is, right? I'm just talking about what I know. You have to adapt it on your own. That's not my job, okay? So in the relationships I've seen where men and women are been friends, right? Been attracted to each other even, but it just never could cross the barrier because they were too good of friends. I'm always laughing because I'm like, that is exactly what you want is in a marriage. Figure the sex out. Seriously. If you got to figure something out, figure that part out. But if you can get the intimacy down, everything else kind of rolls into play. And when you see marriages with people who are totally different from one another, they like different things, they don't even spend a lot of time together sometimes, but they stay together, you think, well, maybe it's the absence that's making it palatable. What? It's not that, right? What it is the ability to be yourself in a safe place, to really honestly and wholly, authentically be yourself. And you find these relationships are usually very beneficial. The kids grow up healthy. There's a relationship. They want to be around these people because of the way they interact with one another. It's really kind of a cool thing when you see the way it all comes together, because there's all these groups of friends that they affect. There's the grandparent. Everybody kind of comes together around that relationship. And the reason why I'm using that is because my grandparents to me were like that. They became like matriarch and patriarch almost in our family, to the point where everybody kind of gravitated to them as like the example of how you should do it. And they were married for like 70 years. I think it was not quite 70 years, maybe like 69, almost 70 years. But all around them were these long, long marriages, right? And it was weird because it's like, that's all I saw. But I go back and look at it, man, if you have one really good quality relationship, it's the ability to build a bunch of more out of it through friendships and partnerships and that kind of thing. It's amazing because the intimacy drives security. Intimacy allows the ability to have authenticity, and that drives security. And the more authentic you can be with a person, the more secure the relationship is you feel. That's why it feels so tumultuous when you're authentic with somebody and they break your heart, or they cheat on you, or they do something that breaks the trust, makes you feel vulnerable or ashamed of who you are. The reason why it's so dangerous is because of that. So that's why we're having this conversation, because in order to get to that point where you have a relationship where the bond is there, authenticity is there, the intimacy is there, and you got the safe place where you can be yourself and they can be themselves. And even when it doesn't lock up, it can be funny more than painful at times. You get there by going through friction points. And here's the thing. If you're willing to give up on the relationship, it's almost impossible to see the real power in going through those struggles. And if that's the case, that's how you get a 50% failure rate in marriages. That's how relationships fail so easily. It's because there's always a thought process, there's a reason to leave. And people hear me talk about this, I'm gonna say this, and I'm not gonna say a lot about it, but I want to bring this up because it's a point I think is really important, right? You know, when I was young, when you're young, you talk about getting married, people say, what would you do if your wife cheated on you? This is before I was married. I was like, nothing. Like, what do you mean? I said, people do what they want to do sometimes. I said, sometimes that's what they need to do. I don't know, man. I said, but here's the thing. I wouldn't marry somebody that if they cheated on me, I would leave them. That'd be pointless. He said, what do you mean? I said, why would you marry somebody with something that prevalent, right, that happens as a reason, and leave that out there as a reason to break up the relationship? Why would you even go into a relationship if you were willing to leave for that? Or somebody messing with your money, or didn't like your mother, or whatever the deal is, right? Whatever the deal is, right? Whatever your stake in the ground things are, right? Let me make sure I'm missing something here. Okay, we'll get Doc's mom on a little bit too here. And this is really, I think it's important to get her perspective. So I apologize. What I want to say is this, is that if you have a reason, you can leave, right? If there's a reason to say, no, this is too much, you're never going to really give it all you have. See, when we think about being married or being in these long-term relationships, having this life partner, soulmate, or whatever you want to call it, when you think about it, everything's kind of going well. right? And sometimes things are going terribly wrong and you just want anybody to help you out. And you see those kind of relationships start that way, where somebody's kind of down in the dumps and somebody brings them along, right? Or somebody meets someone at the top, or meets someone that's both struggling together. And you meet all these people, these all different places, right? And whoever you are at that point in time may be more about being accepted than accepting someone else. So you really open to accepting this person, right? But this person may not be as open to accepting you as you really are when you're not struggling, when you're not begging for help, when you're not down in the dumps. Once you get your confidence and feel like you can carry it on your own, can this person still maintain that relationship with you? Are they okay with watching you even sometimes become stronger than they are for a time or forever? And it doesn't change the love and intimacy they have for you, right? And that's the part where I think that in relationships, the biggest struggle happens is when it starts becoming a competition of importance. And I'm going to back up a little bit because I want to get Rhadi's mom in here, because she's been in a relationship for a very long time with Dr. Ferguson's father. They've raised a successful son. And I think it's valuable. This is where I get my advice. So I don't come up with these things. I'm just getting to the point with my wife. We've been together long enough now that I feel like I can really give some legit advice. Like now I can really start to give people advice. Before I was kind of just telling them about my experience, but now I'm at the point where I can actually step in there and say, look, man, just like my dad kind of did with me, you don't know what you're talking about. Like you just feel like this right now, but you gonna understand that what you're feeling right now is based around this situation. And once you understand a little differently, you'll feel differently about it later. And having that perspective, I think, is vitally important. So I'm available to do that now, but I'm going to step back here, hopefully, and let Dr. Ferguson's mom jump on if she's willing to, and let her talk a little bit about her perspective, because I'm going to tell you, just watching their relationship as an external, I'm really external, right? It's still kind of cool to me because you can see the authenticity of their personalities and the authenticity of their person around one another. And it's kind of funny because you meet them together, but they're so individually strong as individuals. You respect their union more because you know that this is easily two fireballs. They can they can get it going, but they find a way to make it work. And it's kind of cool to watch because it gives me confidence that I can keep going and doing what I'm doing too. So,
well, hey, Coach Charles, let me say this. So I'm gonna bring on who we call the real Dr. Ferguson in the family. My mom was the first one to achieve a doctorate degree in the family. I forget exactly what the year was, but my mom is here, and they knocked on the door to give Rufus his birthday gift. Rufus was born on the 5th. I was born on the 3rd, and I asked my mom, I said, can you just get on? Because we did talk about this yesterday, didn't we?
We did.
Possibly get my parents. And I had no clue you guys were coming
here. We can't see you, right?
No. But my mom and dad, old school, and I ain't told them that they was getting on. So
Understood.
You know how that go.
I do.
But if you could just start out, Mom, but just talking about how long you've been married.
Well, first of all, I thank you for the invitation to share my perspectives. I have been married to the same man for 48 years.
Wow.
And so you tell me what it is you want me to address. I'm more than happy to do so.
Can I ask a question then?
Go right ahead.
All right. Because we've been together, it'll be 24 years this year, married, together for like 29 almost right now. And here's the thing I want to know, right? After you get through the first time, you feel like there's no way I can do this.
You mean before the marriage or after the marriage?
I'm talking about afterwards. You had here's the funny thing. So I'm gonna back up a little bit. Because this is my experience. I've had a conversation with a bunch of people who had the same experience. Did you guys have your first big fight not long after you got married, and you can't remember what it's about?
Well, let me just say this to you in all honesty, with the greatest candor that I have for you. We have never really had a big argument. both my husband and I are from very large families.
Yeah.
And so when you're in a large family, you kind of get a lot of practice with arguing, and you pretty much learn the arguments that you can win and the ones you're not going to win. And you don't see arguments or dissension necessarily as big contradictions that have to be addressed right here and now, like a battle that has to be won. I would chalk that up as just another notch in life where a lot of people think I'm going to win this argument, or she might win or I might lose. It's really not about the small battles. It's about the big war. And I've had a long time to observe the inconsistencies and the discrepancies in relationships that cause the demise of marriages. And mostly they're based on feelings.
Ooh.
And the people engaged in the marriage, here's the bottom line. They do not demonstrate accountability to themselves. Because think of it, before you marry somebody, you have engaged your mind, your body, your spirit, and your soul. But when you get ready to walk away, you forget about the vow that you made to yourself. Whose judgment is the most important judgment to you? It should be your judgment, right? Well, that was the judgment you made when you made the decision to get married. But when feelings enter into it, then I don't feel like I want to stay married. I don't feel like this is the thing for me now. What changed from the time that you made the decision? The only real and relevant thing is time. Everything else is right there in your spirit and in your soul. And if your spirit is connected with the spirit that it should be connected with, then that is the spirit you should walk with. But most people look at outer distractions, mostly things in the world, people in the world, what they want, what they think they want, who they want to be like, who they want to impress, things like that. And that is the decision that draws them out of the original decision they made to be married or to get married, to engage in marriage, to commit to one person. And committing to one person for the rest of your life is a decision that most people do not take lightly. And that is why they establish it before many witnesses. And some people only establish it before a judge, but they have witnesses there. And that is the reason, so that it can be established. Some things can't be established without another witness. You know, you go in court and talk about, well, I saw and I heard. And the first thing the judge is going to do is look for another witness. That is the purpose of your mind, your body, your spirit, and your soul. They are the witnesses for you when you make that decision. And you should not take it lightly. You make a vow and you take a vow. What does the Bible say? It's better that you not make that vow than you make the vow and then break it.
Yes.
I mean, and who are you going to be any more accountable to than yourself?
So I have a question to ask, because this is about we talked about the friction points as they exist in life, the friction points in relationships, and now the friction point in intimate relationships. What is your advice? And if you don't mind saying it again, because there's other people who just come on and they start listening.
Come on with it.
How long have you been married, and how do you deal with those friction points of the world of, hey, I could do this better by myself. When you hear the music, I could do bad by myself. I don't need no help from you, or I'm an independent woman, or how do you deal with these friction points?
Okay, now I'm going to go back to the original thought and dilemma that you can engage in a lot of different battles, but there's really one big war. The big war to be won is to stay engaged in the marriage. And there are many little battles that come to defeat. And these are, most of the battles are, well, I'll put it like this. Most of the battles that most people will engage in or run into in a marriage are around two main issues. One is the physical relationship.
Romance.
And the second one is the financial relationship.
And finance.
Mhm.
In other words, who you going to sleep with, bed with, and if I'm going to do it with this same person for the rest of my life, boom, there you go. It's out there. Yes, that's a bottom line issue. And the next one is, do we have the same respect for money? That's it. Everything else follows from one of those two. Everything else. I would say don't be too dogmatic on either side. Because
That's
in the end,
perspective, though, Mama.
the forgiveness has to prevail.
So let me ask a question around that, because I think that's one of those areas where today is interesting to me, because I watched the leveling of the playing field, if you will, on the sexuality or the sensationalism of sexuality of men and women and different genders and what have you, right? We're starting to see a more of a open conversation about people expressing what they enjoy from a physical perspective, at bare minimum, in a relationship. With all of these, sensationalized ideas of how intimate relationships are going to be, how do we even look at somebody else to be with for an entire life when you feel like there's so many things out there that may or may not be something you may or may not like? Like, how do you get to the point where, I came from a time where there was still some value for chastity, right? To an extent, at least managed chastity, if nothing else, right?
Yes.
Being promiscuous was never glorified. Like, it was, even if you admired it a little bit, you couldn't really publicly say it so much. How do we focus inwardly on a relationship with something like who you're going to sleep with for the rest of your life is on the table? And I'm going to ask about money later, but I really want to ask about that one first, if you don't mind.
Well, here's my basic response. Some things are going to be expedient in a marriage relationship that are not going to be expedient if you are not married. So some people make a decision that I am not going to constrain myself in the area of my physical interactions. And so therefore I won't get married. Well, if you're going to prescribe to that particular viewpoint, then in all likelihood, you do not prescribe to a Christian framework. And I do. So then everything that everybody, I'm going to say these words inclusively, everything that everybody looks for in a physical relationship can be accomplished through marriage.
Oh, that's a big statement there. And
everything, and I'm going to repeat it can be accomplished through marriage, because that is the only framework that provides the wherewithal for you to do all of it
with no condemnation,
with no consequences or condemnation.
Can I say something real quick? I think that point gets missed more than anything. Doc and I were talking about this. We said there's no, we said there's no, what's the term we use, Doc?
But the marriage bed is not defiled.
There's no defilement.
Right.
But if we say there's no defilement, most people who do not have a biblical reference will think just about the word defile.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to put it in make a more practical application of it, because What, in fact, is it that most people look for when they go outside of a marriage to engage in other physical relationships?
It's either
Oral sex,
a high level of intimacy,
or oral sex, sex with the same person, anal sex. What is it? Very specific things that they look for. In most cases, if it is not unnatural, it can be regarded within the marital framework.
here's the thing, I'm gonna say it this way. I'm not gonna get as specific as you, but I'm gonna say this. I believe what you're saying is a point that if there was any advice I could give, what I try to give to young people, if I get young married advice, the two things are: one, best way to keep a marriage going is don't leave. That's the first thing I tell them.
Number one.
Number one. I say that's how you keep it together. I said don't leave. If you commit to staying, all you'll see is the solutions, right? If leaving is an option, you immediately start to eliminate solutions, and that's the problem most people run into is they put leaving on the table and it screws up everything else, right?
Well, can I just say this? You kind of referred to young people. Let me assure you that older people and people who have been married for very long periods of time also have these dilemmas in marriage. And, I've counseled several couples, several single women and men. And it really gets to a point that most of society defines now as a point of curiosity. I wasn't really a lesbian, but I was curious about what it would be like with another woman. I wasn't really curious. And so what we're up against now in our society is people thinking that their thoughts and what they want and what they think they want is something new, novel, and different. No, it's always been there.
Here's the thing, right? And it's funny. I'm going to touch this one thing real quick. I'm going to get back on. Can I ask you a question about that? I was saying I give advice to young people because I ain't old enough to give advice to old people yet. No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think what we're saying is funny because I'm so glad you shared that because I want to make sure that everybody understood what you just said is that, listen, this is a global issue because no matter how many generations of human beings we have gone through, we're still having this debate about what you can have in your marriage. And I'll tell you about a funny story and I want to ask you a question about what you said. I was in college and I was in this room, but and this is a lot of some strong sisters, right? And I'm talking about what I wanted in a marriage, right? And the girl was like, I never forget, and I ain't gonna tell her name because I asked her, but she said, listen, she's from Detroit. She said, listen, why does a woman have to do X, Y, Z? I said, I didn't say women have to do X, Y, Z. I said, my wife. And it was funny because it's not, I think that's the part we miss out on is if we stop trying to categorize it, to your point, and making something inbounds and out of bounds, then you could just find a person that wants to be with you, and you guys can agree to work out whatever you work out. And then as long as you stay together, guess what happens? It works out because the thing you really wanted was to live your life with somebody that you really cared about and cared about you. That when you told your story, they were a part of it. So how did you discover, right? Was this something you did, what you just talked about, was this something you discovered before you were married, while you were married, like early on, or you figured it out over time?
All of that. Because here again, I'm from a very large family.
I'm teeing these questions up because I'm trying to, so good job. Thank you.
That's okay. I'm pretty spontaneous.
I watched
and impromptu, so go at it. And, it's very little I haven't heard so far, so just feel free. Some questions you might think in ordinary course of a day, I can't ask her that because, that would be disrespectful. Well, there are people who might not really know me and wouldn't mind disrespecting me. So feel their shoes and ask the questions that you think they might ask.
Yes, ma'am.
Because that's how it is. Again, I'm from a very large family, so I had the chance to observe 7 people before me become adults and 7 people after me become adults. So I was kind of sandwiched in the middle there, and I had a chance to observe what males and females did right and wrong. And then I had a chance to advise the younger set what the older males and females did that was right and wrong, and the consequences of what was done right and what was done wrong.
Okay,
I'll go back to
Can I ask you about that?
I'm sorry, go right ahead.
Okay, so do you think that, and I'm gonna tell you something, my roommate was the baby of 16 in college, and I learned so much more about how to get along with people. Do you think the smaller families and less community could be impacting a lot of what we see or what we're seeing today, not just on an individual basis, but more of a massive scale? Like, as far as that, because people are in general in smaller families, more tight-knit groups, that we don't really learn how to get along with people in different stages of life?
I would say overall it's a relatively balanced experience, because while I was in a larger family, I was in a smaller society.
Ooh.
The world was larger, but the society I had to live in, was separate and unequal. But separate was the most important thing, because I didn't see other opportunities. I didn't see other roles and other professions and other races necessarily. I mean, I just didn't see them on a daily basis. I didn't see white people. I just saw other Black people. So I never learned how other cultures interacted, operated, or lived with other people, aside from seeing somebody go into the white restroom and me going to the colored restroom, or drink at the colored fountain and them at the white fountain. I didn't have any interactions with white people, so I didn't know. In other words, I operated to the fullest extent and interaction that I could in a very small pool, because that's what I had.
So,
but in the Bay,
so here's the question then, right? In that situation, does the depth of understanding the depth of a relationship allow you, when you're introduced to a new relationship, to be open to its depth, as opposed to having a bunch of more surface relationships where you really don't get a chance to find out what they're like at their core? You just kind of deal with the superficial nature of relationships.
Initially, it's only the superficiality.
Okay.
However, once you get beyond the barrier of, I guess the uniqueness of, beyond integration, beyond desegregation, once you get with other people not like yourself, you generally understand that people are basically people. And then the depth and the breadth of other interactions, human interactions, comes into play, and then we're able to transfer and apply all of those life lessons, because that barrier is no longer there. I can know that, yes, this is a white person, but some of them can be stinking, nasty, and low down and dirty and filthy, just like a Black person. And so I don't have to, it's like certain generalizations you make about people. Like, I'm sure most white people thought that most Black people couldn't read. I was 7 years old when I heard 2 other young white girls reading. I went to work one day with a Black woman who did day work, because I was a young black girl, and they were teaching me how to do day work.
Okay.
And so the 2 white girls there, I overheard them reading. And I was shocked to find out that they could only call words and not read.
So
it was,
there was an assumption that because they had access, they had greater ability.
I don't know what kind of access they had. All I know is that And all I knew then was that their skin color was different than mine.
Okay. So
they lived in a different neighborhood than I did.
So
and somebody went into their house to work and clean up and wash for them. And nobody did that in my neighborhood.
So the inequity of it was more centered around that piece of it. It was more of an equity of financial inequity than anything else.
You know what? As a 7-year-old, I don't know that I ever considered it to be unequal or that considered there to be an inequity. I don't think that. Yeah, it was. I knew it was different, sure. But a 7-year-old is concentrating on comfort. What feels good. That's what 7-year-olds do. 39-year-olds who are married shouldn't do it, but that's what they do. They do too. But a 7-year-old concentrates on feelings. I don't know. They don't feel like that. I don't think they can read better than me. That was in my mind, And so I didn't know any better. I pushed the door open and told them to give me the book. Let me read and show them how to read. And the woman I went to work with that day almost got fired.
Oh my goodness.
Because the little girl told her, you even have her thinking she's better than us.
Ooh. And
when I heard that, it was like an echo that went over the Smoky Mountains, because in my mind, I'm like, of course I'm better than you. I can read better than you. It never entered into my mind.
I see what you said. So here's the thing. I think, let me make sure I got this. I want to make sure we bring this home.
Sure.
I think that what people need to understand is that in this situation, it's easy to have assumptions about what you were thinking, right, what was affecting your perspective, the perspective of other people,
right,
the origin of the response. Like if somebody says that, like it's either the implication that you knew you weren't supposed to make anybody think they were better than me, or you knew I thought there was a competition. Why would you let me find out the truth? It could have been a multitude of things. But I think the thing that we're hearing though is that, and this is the way I hear it, is that I think that while it may not be a directly a correlation, I think the idea, because you were able to understand there was depth to relationships or things themselves, that it opens the door to there being an opportunity for that same depth in something you don't really know that much about yet.
Let me say this, Coach Look, I want to bring this back, and I think this hammers all the points home.
Mm-hmm.
The friction points or the points of disbelief that occur in that situation and in marriage when people get into in the situation they think they have to leave, happens when their belief system is challenged by the reality of their situation. And people's belief systems change, but the reality of their situation is also changing. So the two things are changing at the same time. I told you, I remember my mom had this conversation with me. She said, I'm not the same person that I was from my 20s to my 30s,
mm-hmm,
to my 30s to my 40s, to my 40s to my 50s, to my 50s to my 60s. She said, and while I'm changing, she said, your dad is changing.
Yeah.
And there could be a period of time within 30 to 40 that y'all are two different people that you weren't from 20 to 30.
Dude, your mom says something really important. When you get to that point in your relationship where you feel like this ain't what I want, or this ain't what I signed, this ain't what I signed.
Yeah, that's what I signed up for.
That's not what have you, or you start to feel like you need to leave and you made a bad decision even. You got to remind yourself, and this is something I'm going to be a candid in my own relationship, where there are times when my wife and I are discussing challenges we're having, and I remind myself all the time, I'm like, look, dude, when you thought you were everything to cast me out, this was the decision you made. Do you trust yourself, the person you were then? And I have to remind myself that, hey, listen, I've been a lot of different things in my life. The one thing I was then was certain. I was certain. Like I knew what I wanted. And I was thinking about my life in a long-term way. Now, it didn't take all the curves and I wanted to go, but who I wanted to be sitting on that porch with, at 80 something years old, like the thing I wanted for my life was my granddad was sitting on the porch with his girlfriend in their 80s. That was cool to me. Like anybody can have 17 girlfriends. Can you have one girlfriend for 70 years who still want to sit on the porch with you after all that? And she found out who you really are. Right?
Right.
That was important to me.
It's also important to know yourself well enough to be able to, go back to it, be and stay accountable to the decisions that you make.
But I don't think people remind themselves of who they were when they made the decision.
No, because people hide behind a false rationale that, times change, I'm changed, I'm just a different person. That's like an airplane that sits on the runway. And as long as it's sitting there, nobody has anything to say.
Mm-hmm.
Once it starts ascending into the air, you can change all you want to, but you better not turn that ignition off.
So listen,
and you're going to hit some bumps.
Stay there. Keep going with that. Keep going.
You're going to hit some bumps. And it might not be the best ride, but you're going to have to keep ascending. You got to keep going. You got to keep going until you hit the point where you can cruise and come on down out of there together.
So
because nobody said it's going to be easy now. Nobody said that.
I got to piggyback on that because I want you to close that out because it was a Reader's Digest. I used to read Reader's Digest in the bathroom when I was a kid. That's my confession for the day.
The condensed version.
Now I read the big one, the other one.
Now we get the large print. Go ahead.
Jokes. It was all those jokes at work. Humor in the uniform. I used to love little stories in there.
So did I. Go ahead.
There was a joke about a pilot sitting on a plane, and there was a lot of turbulence, and it was like a really rocky landing. And the lady sitting next to him turns and goes, "In your professional opinion, how was that landing?" He said, "Well, my professional opinion, a good landing is when everybody can get off the plane."
I know you're right.
He said a great landing is when you can fly the plane again. So I think the thing that, if I was going to look at a marriage, the way you just described it, understanding that at takeoff, when you're ready to go on vacation and you think you're going somewhere cool, you get on that plane, you're excited, get to the airport and the lines, you can't wait to get on that plane. When you start hitting that turbulence, you start thinking, Lord, if I got to go right now, and everything's starting to change, there's a baby sitting next to you crying or whatever's happening.
But you're not going to jump off though.
Wait a minute now. Hold on. Why aren't you going to jump off though?
The immediate demise.
No. You don't immediately die as soon as you jump off.
If you're in the middle of the air.
Here's the thing though, right? Your demise may become certain.
Yes.
But it's not immediate. But let me say it this way. I think the reason why you don't jump out is you don't feel like the situation is better outside than it is inside.
Right.
Right. Hold on.
I agree with that.
Watch yourself now.
But you never know till you're out there.
Hold on. But the closer you get to the ground,
the more you want to jump out.
That's why your ascending point is so important. And that's why I want to come back to that. Because the closer you get to the ground, the more feasible it seems that you might not die.
You might.
So let me say this.
Wait. I cannot lose your mom's point on this one. She said you have to keep ascending. Marriage is not about coasting until you have earned the right to coast. You have to ascend high enough that when you coast, you don't ever get close enough to the ground to feel like it's better jumping out than it is landing. And I'm going to leave it at that. Amen.
Amen.
It's been my pleasure.
Listen, we're going to share that one. You can't take that for yourself. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for jumping on. It's interesting to have a perspective, but more importantly, to have a woman's perspective who has the experience in marriage, who also has the diversity of experience of understanding, having to expose, you had to come into a whole new culture full of people. Like the idea of what was out there for a Black woman, they got married when you got married almost 50 years ago. And you talk about the difference of what the idea of what was out there, what the options were, versus a Black woman today. Like, it's amazing. But despite it all, you still found a reason to keep ascending. Or you might be able to coach now. I don't know. I'll leave it alone. But thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Yeah, man. They making the exit. They came to drop Rufus's gift saw.
That's
So
good.
they about to close out with Rufus. But man, that was good. We wanted to get them on and talk about the friction points in relationships. And I'll tell you this, man. The one thing about I would say the trip of relationships or the trip of marriage is that God in and of himself is timeless. When you start putting time on your thing and you don't respect or engage yourself in the possibility of the afterlife, you start believing that you're running out of time. And when you put time on your trip, you think that I'm supposed to be at my destination already, which makes you feel like you need to get out of the plane so that you can get where you're going. And some people, they believe if they have enough money, they have a financial parachute. They believe they have enough friends or supporters around, they have an emotional parachute. They believe that if they can think their way through it, then they have a mental parachute. And what they do is they jump. They do a Geronimo, and they just believe wherever I land is better off than being in the plane with these motherfuckers. And that's just what they think. I didn't want to say it like that.
Argue.
I
think what you're describing, right? I'm gonna be honest with you. I think it's the thing that really helps me through our relative friction points in our marriage is that I still have this idea of what we can be, right? And that's what has driven me from day one. Like I used to drive. I said this to my wife very early in our marriage. I said, "Listen to me. We have an argument about something. I can't remember what it was. I just know we're at the framing store. Like I could start an argument pretty much about anything at that time. So there's no telling what it was about. But I was like, listen to me. I'm willing to wait 70 years to get one day of what I think we can be. Because if I wasn't, I wouldn't have started this. Like I can't understand. That's the part I think that, for me, if I want to share the value of intimacy is that it's the understanding of what my dad told me, right? And what you just heard, which is find somebody you can make it with. Understand that you're going to change. Values are going to change. Relationships are going to change. Feelings are going to change. Physical things are going to change. My mom had to take care of my dad when he couldn't take care of himself for like 2.5 years, man. I watched it. I know what love looks like. I watched my grandmother fixing my granddad's collar in a coffin because that's her baby. He want to make sure he looked good. Now, I've watched love extend past life. So for me, I don't feel like I'm in a rush, right? I get anxious at times, but I remind myself in the most intimate times when we're together, when my wife and I are together, when I'm alone in my prayer of how important, right? The value of what I know we can be and what I knew we could be when I started this thing, right? And if we can get there, it doesn't make a difference what happens in the middle, right? Because that wasn't the point I was fighting for. I was fighting for the end. You feel me? I don't care how many points y'all up in the third quarter. We got Tom Brady, right? And I feel like the Super Bowl was worth fighting through being down 23 points. Because I feel like if we win the Super Bowl, all that work would have been worth it. But if you don't think it's worth it, just like you started this conversation, there comes a point where you want it to be over more than you want to win. And that's how you fail in a marriage or in a relationship in general. That's where intimacy requires the value of friction points, understanding that the friction points aren't there to break you up. They're there to build you up, right? You got to burn some fuel to get that plane up in the air. You can't keep the fuel and fly. So you got to burn some fuel. It's going to take a massive amounts of energy to get off the ground, massive amounts of energy to keep climbing, because you got to climb high enough till, as your mama said, cruise, but stay high enough off the ground that it make more sense to land the plane than to jump out by yourself. And that's why you make intimate. That's the value of intimacy in relationships. And that's the value, of friction points in intimate relationships. It's the burning of the fuel it takes to get high enough in that relationship to where even when you're falling, you feel like it's better to land the plane than it is to jump out with a parachute.
Now, I want to talk to the people some people are in relationships and friendships where you just feel like it's not really worth the work anymore. You feel like you can't do it anymore, or you feel like I've had enough. There are people who are like that in the job. There are people who are like that with familial relationships. And here's what we want to tell you. We want to let you know that we have an opportunity coming up in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We have 2 more parts of the series to finish in terms of friction points. But we're going to have some people come in town in Tampa with us and spend the evening with us at a place called the Tampa Club, where we're both members. It will be an intimate evening with Coach Arlo and myself, and we're going to talk about the friction points that you have and also provide you with some solutions so that you can work your way through those friction points. Now, here's the beautiful thing about it. The beautiful thing about it is that if you would like to come in early, we're going to have an opportunity for you to get some personal training with us early. You can stop by my dojo, and we'll also stop by Coach Arlo's office. Let you see kind of the inside of our lives and see what we do. And understand that we also have friction points too. Now, we want to do this because you are just like we are. All right. You need some help, you need some coaching, you need some mentoring. And it's usually that one thing, which is that linchpin piece of advice that unlocks everything else for you and allows you to move forward. In life, in order to get higher, what you have to do is you have to increase the lift and decrease the drag. That's what allows planes to go up. You need to be around people who are going to give you the right information at the right time to lift you up and to remove the thoughts, not necessarily the people, sometimes the thoughts and the thinking processes which are dragging you down. So in the next couple of days, as we finish out the series on friction points, please pay close attention to it. We're going to provide you with an invite to come in town. As a matter of fact, we're going to have 2 dates for you to come in town for the people who can't make it. And those individuals who have children, all right, if you have small children, we are going to make a way for you to attend also with your small children. If you have to attend with children, we are going to create an environment so that we can split the room and move half of the room. We check with the people at the Tampa Club. We can split half of a room, let your kids be on the other end. It might not be all the way quiet, but it's a situation where if you have children, you can come too, because what we found out is a lot of our clients are also single parents. If you have to get in the car or if you have to fly, you got to bring your kids with you because it's your weekend. And I understand this. We are going to make sure that happens for you. So thank you so much for listening to this particular discussion and the inclination of your ear. This is Dr. Ferguson and Coach Arlo. We always want to say, we love you.